Where is God when things go bad? Today we're going to begin a 4-part series in Lamentations, and this short book was a product of a specific event, the grief over the Babylonians' destruction of Jerusalem in the year 587 BCE. This was the defining moment of loss for the ancient Israelites. It shocked their faith. In 2 Kings, we see a telling of that story. It's a description of the absolute destruction. And in 2 Kings, it's chronological. It lists the names and places. And it feels like the author is telling a story. Unlike 2 Kings, Lamentations, a product of the exact same event, lacks the names and dates. There's no sequential order. Instead of the prose of 2 Kings, Lamentations is poetry. It's 5 chapters, and there are 5 different poems. The first chapter and the second chapter are both what are called acrostic poems. Each verse begins with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, so there are 22 verses in those 2 chapters. Chapter 1 focuses on Lady Zion's grief. And in chapter 1 has that feel of a funeral dirge. It's plodding, it's slow, it's full of heaviness. When the Babylonians sacked the city, they felt the loss personally, as if it were a death in the family. Chapter 2, where our reading comes from today, is about the fall of Jerusalem. Now, this is a short book, and it's a truthful expression of pain. There are snippets of impassioned hope throughout as the author looks to the future. And throughout there's a thirst for justice. What went wrong doesn't have to remain wrong. It can be better. And that's the same with our losses. If you've thought of something already, if you've thought of the heaviness of heart, if you've thought of something that you carry with you, it doesn't have to be the defining moment of your life. If you've thought about the hardest thing you've ever faced, that doesn't have to be who you are. We don't have to live in those moments or remain in them. And most importantly, we don't face them alone. That's why I look at hope and see you. Since the book addressed the socio-political situation of the ancient Israelites, there's a decidedly political aspect to it. And when we try to make sense of Lamentations, or 2 Kings for that matter, for our lives today, we can't ignore the political implications. Lamentations teaches resistance. Resistance to the difficulties, resistance to the things that push us down, resistance to the things that seem like they're the end when they're not really the end. The tears from the time of loss can lead to something new. These are the big sweeping themes of the book, and these are the things that we're going to be returning to over the next few weeks. And as we start this series, some of you might be thinking to yourself, why? Why Lamentations? Who made you do this? Well, the answer is no one. Or the Holy Spirit. Take your pick. We were looking ahead at worship and talking about what to do, and I mentioned this to Megan. I'm outing you here, and she said, ooh, a lament. That feels appropriate. See, for some of us, this kind of honesty takes us into discomfort land. And if you're one of those people, don't worry, we're not going to build houses in discomfort land. This is not our new home. This is not where we will remain. And in fact, Lamentations includes hope. It's hope for what can be. It's hope in leaning into the darkness to recognize that the darkness isn't the end. It's hope for something new and recognition that pain doesn't last forever. We face countless reasons for lament today. When you're hurting, when the test results come back positive, when the relationship sours and sours until words like irreconcilable start sounding like they make sense, when the news just keeps getting worse, even when you've tried to take a break from it, when you go to what you think will be a pristine natural landscape, the beach, and you're imagining in your mind's eye before getting there how beautiful it will be, and you arrive only to find bits of plastic and styrofoam washing up on the shore, when scenes of animals soaked in oil splash across your screen, when racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and every other thing that dehumanizes another person starts to sound like it's flourishing. We, dear friends, have reasons to lament. And that laundry list isn't even exhaustive. It doesn't even scratch the surface. And if my question instead were to be, how many reasons do we have to lament? It would be a floodgate, because our world is full of pain and suffering. Our world is full of struggles. This is a truism across major religions of the world. This is, in fact, the first truth, the first noble truth in Buddhism. This was why R.E.M's song, Everybody Hurts, was such a big hit. This resonates with so many people because pain is universal. Everyone does, in fact, hurt. And lamenting is a way that people try to understand and deal with their pain. It's honest and it's open. Chapter 2 shifts the focus from looking at everything that's gone wrong in Lamentations 1 to Lamentations 2 blames God. Read the whole chapter. It's hard stuff. It's brutal. I shot an eye over to see our children as they were listening to these words and thought we should probably put a rating like the MPGA guide like they do for movies. This is probably maybe a PG-13 text, or if we read the whole book, it might even move up a little bit. Lamentations 2 opens and closes with a reference to the Lord's wrath. And for those who like to pin things in the Old Testament on an angry God, this is fodder for this idea. However, laments like this are not about an angry God. Laments are an honest and open response to what we see in the world. Laments like this are a form of protest. They're a way to process the deep emotions that come from somewhere down inside. The poem gives a sacred dignity to expressions of suffering. You hurt. I hurt. We all have sources of pain, and God is there in the midst of the darkness. God is there listening. God walks through it with us and is present, and God, Lamentations reminds us, cares. In our reading, the daughter of Zion raises her voice. Her speech is short, as if she just barely has enough energy at the end of the chapter to respond. Kathleen O'Connor writes, unlike the narrator, she does not interpret the cause of her plight or speak about the past. Her speech arises from that thickness of trauma. She repeats the demands from Lamentations 1. Look, Lord, look and consider. As if to say, God, if you would only notice how bad things are, if you could only see how many troubles I'm having, then you would do something, which you only say if you think God might. You only say those things if you think God is listening. You only say, God, help me, if you think there's a possibility God will help you. That's why there are no atheists in foxholes. There are no atheists in storms at sea. That cry of God is the awareness that there is something more than what we can see or imagine. There is hope. And even though things are bad, or maybe even beyond bad, we can cry out knowing that God is listening. And we know that we don't cry out alone. We cry out with the chorus of voices around us who love us, who wish us peace, who wish us goodness. We can cry out with them as they cry with us. As Hebrews 12 reminds us, this great cloud of witnesses. We are not alone and we don't suffer in isolation. Or maybe it's better to say we don't have to. Recently, I read Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy. And again, as I was going through the book, I thought about our need for lament. I knew this series was coming, and I kept thinking, this speaks to what we're talking about. Toward the end of the book, he has a chapter called Broken. But before I mention an episode from that chapter, his journey started when he was in law school, and he did an internship in which he encountered some men on death row. And that ignited a passion in his soul to help people who were victims of an imperfect system. It reminded me of a conversation Melanie and I, there she is, on this other side, you've moved. Melanie and I had right after she graduated from law school, and she was practicing law in the United States Navy as a JAG officer, and she was defending sailors. In my naivete, I said, how can you defend someone you know is guilty? And she said, in the United States, everyone has a right to a fair trial. Everyone has a right to a full and competent defense. And everyone is innocent until proven guilty. I asked her permission before sharing that with you. And I also asked before telling her why. I was asking, do you remember this conversation? She did not. But it made an impression on me. It made an impression on me, and I should have learned that at that moment, probably 26 years ago, that she's right and I should just listen to her. In Stephen's book, after years of grueling uphill battles, with some wins and some losses, one night he was sitting at his desk talking with a man who was on death row named Jimmy Dill. Mr. Dill's case had been unusual. He was accused of shooting someone during a robbery, and the victim didn't die. So the state charged him with aggravated assault. And he was in jail. It was about 9 months while waiting for his trial. And in that time, the victim's wife left him, and he became gravely ill and died. So the state changed his charges to capital murder. One factor that neither the prosecution nor his defense ever considered was his severe intellectual disability, his lifetime of abuse, his battle with substance abuse. It's a complicated case, and I'm not trying to relitigate it here. It's more about the pain, because on the day of his scheduled execution, Brian Stevenson was on the phone with him, and at the end of their conversation, Jimmy Dill said, "Mr. Brian, I just want to thank you for fighting for me." After getting off the phone, Brian Stevenson collapsed into his own hands in tears. At his desk, all of that pain of the years of fighting these battles welled up inside. And out loud he said, "Why am I doing this?" He was exhausted. He was frustrated. He was tired of this Sisyphean battle against systemic injustice. But then he realized he was working to help broken people because he is broken too. He writes, "We are all broken by something. We have all hurt someone and have been hurt. We all share the condition of brokenness, even if it's not equivalent. He then quoted from Thomas Merton, and I had to go back to Seeds of Contemplation. Merton is one of my favorite authors, and so I had to read the quote in its context, and I'm really glad I did because it was a close approximation of what Merton wrote, but not quite, and the sentence before really deepens it. What Merton wrote was, "As long as we are on earth, the love that unites us will bring us suffering by our very contact with one another. Because this love is a resetting of a body of broken bones. As long as we are on earth, the love that unites us will bring us suffering because the very contact we have with one another, because this love is a resetting of a body of broken bones." There are lots of reasons to lament. All of us have them. Lamentations isn't an end in sadness. It's a step toward healing. So when you're facing troubles, when the darkness comes, lament. Lean into it. Recognize pain and brokenness. Then help one another get up, get to work, fight for justice, work for what's right, and try to prevent more of that pain again. Throughout it all, never forget this. God is with you, listening, loving you right where you are right now, and walking with you every single step of the way.